Welcome to Search for Signs. My name is Gary Willing. If this information interests you, please press the like and subscribe button and press the bell for notifications.
Hope you're doing well today. It is May the 14th. And if you have any questions, might I suggest you just posting your question as a comment in the most current video. It's actually easier for me to see that way. If you do post your question with a link in that comment, it goes right into my spam folder, so I'll miss it very easily by doing that. If you feel like emailing me, you can also email me directly at searchforsigns@mail.com. Okay, here we go. This one comes from Music. Here before 600 subscribers. This reminds me of a few years back. Can we be friends? Sure, Music, let's be friends, buddy. But just remember what I always say, a friend will help you move. So if you want to be my friend, I might ask you to help me move a sofa or furniture or something like that up and down. Can you move some stuff up the stairs for me? I used to have a Facebook quote for years that said, a friend will help you move, a real friend will help you move a body. All right, next question. Mike and Crystal Barham. I'll have to wait and see what he teaches before I can get on board. No blind faith here, but curious, did he ask you to do this, or did you choose to do this channel on your own? So the first part of that, I am not looking for anybody to take this on with blind faith. That's the last thing I want. I think it's perfect that you're skeptical about this. You're actually farther along with this information than I was at that time, because when I first heard about it, I hated it. I found this information from, I was in a bookstore, and I happened to stumble across one of Benjamin Creme's books, Maitreya's Mission, Volume 2. And when I took it home and started reading it, I was like, the heck is this? I saw the picture of Maitreya. I actually recognized him immediately. Like, I've seen that guy before somewhere, right? And I didn't know where, but I had some Maitreya experiences before then, so that must have been it. But it was just, and I was like, man, where have I heard that name Maitreya before? It was like on the tip of my tongue. But when I started reading what Benjamin Creme was talking and the questions that people were asking him, I was like, man, this guy's out to lunch, right? So I put the receipt back in the book, and I had it sitting on the counter in my kitchen, and I was going to take it back to the bookstore to try to return it. And I don't know, I was just like, that bookstore's too far away. So I just left it on the counter there for a few weeks, and I don't know if there was nothing on TV or what happened, but I ended up picking up the book again and started reading it and could not put the book down for a long time. And so we all come at this at our own way. I do take my cues from Benjamin Creme, because at the beginning of every lecture that Benjamin Creme had, at the beginning of any radio or television interview that he did, he always said that his job was really easy and simple. It was just to make known the presence of Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom. It was up to us to do with it what we want. And since I heard him say that 20 some odd years ago, that's the approach that I've also tried to take with this information. And so I don't look for any blind faith in people. I don't look for followers. I'm not trying to sell anybody on anything. I'm not even trying to change your beliefs. I'm just trying to tell you about this. And then, I believe in it 100% because of my experiences that I've had. But it's up to all of us to come at this information and to look at this and do with it what we want or whatever. And so, is it the most popular YouTube channel out there? Probably not. It's just, people aren't concerned about this stuff yet. But eventually it will be something that everybody would be thinking about, because Maitreya will eventually be out on, he's already on TV, but he'll be recognized for who he is on TV. And then the whole thing will change. So, but from what I understand it, that if if somebody hears about this information, even if they don't believe it, it allows Maitreya to enter their life without infringing upon their free will. So the masters, Benjamin Creme's master, and Maitreya himself has even encouraged people to make known the presence of Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom as much as you possibly can, or, it depends on how much you believe it. If you believe it at 1%, make it known at 1%. If you believe it at 99.9%, make it known at 99.9%. And in however much you do, whatever little or much or whatever, you'll be helping the planet and humanity better than you could possibly imagine. So that's the reason why I do it. Now, it's the next part is you were curious to know if he asked me to do this. Or did I come on the channel alone, on my own? I don't know. The way that these masters work a lot of times is they don't physically come and tell you, hey, I need you to do this, right? Sometimes they do to people. The closest that Maitreya ever came to, physically telling me to do something, or not to do something, but to suggested that I do something was to paint. I had a Maitreya experience where he and I sat down and talked for about an hour, and he was talking about a lot of different stuff. And I was a musician at the time. I wasn't painting, but he was encouraging me to paint because he said, you remind me of a Rembrandt or a Picasso, is what he said. And not long after that, I started taking up painting, and it's changed my life, but painting is a service as well as anything else. But the other way that these masters work is they plant a thought form into what's called the mind belt. And then whoever is responsive to that information or that thought form will pick up on it and start to work on that, or whatever it is. So there are a lot of examples of this in the science field and technology, right? Well, where two people, one on one side of the planet and the other one on the other side of the planet, who never were in communication with one another, come up with the same scientific discovery or invention at nearly the same time. And that's what happens, And so I know the phone, right? Alexander Graham Bell put in the patent for the phone like a day before somebody else who had almost the exact same invention put it in, But they were, whoever that other person was that nobody remembers his name, and or Alexander Graham Bell, who everybody remembers his name, picked up on that thought form and started working on the invention of the phone. Now, one of Maitreya's priorities, the only priority that's really in existence right now, is the creation of a pool of knowledge freely accessible to all. That was one of his priorities, but that's the internet. Well, in the future, scientists and inventors will be able to communicate freely with others and put up their idea about a certain portion of a medical discovery or a scientific discovery or whatever. Other scientists will pick up on it and work on it freely. We won't be competing against one another the way that Alexander Graham Bell was putting the patent in right before somebody else did. Because imagine if those two geniuses worked together, we probably would have had an even better phone. You know what I mean? So that's what the masters see in terms of the internet, not in terms of the garbage that's on there now, TikTok videos and this. Maybe even my channel might be considered garbage to some people. So, but in the end, that's what we're going to be doing, and it will be free and accessible to all to be able to discover. One discovery that will be, of course, freely accessible for other scientists to look at is the scientific discovery of the human soul. It will be discovered scientifically by a group of, according to the masters, by a group of scientists in France, and then it will be easily duplicated to, they'll be able, other scientists will be able to duplicate it in their own laboratories to be able to prove for themselves that the soul, that we are not bodies with souls, but we are actually souls with bodies. Now, however they do it, that is not my gig, so I couldn't tell you. All right. Now, next question. Thanks for addressing, this one comes from James Pluta. Thanks for addressing my question. You mentioned rays. Are these sun rays? Does this reflect Amon-Ra or Jesus being the sun? I'm not familiar with that last question. The rays is a very in-depth conversation, and I would have to devote it would take more than 15 minutes to really go into. But if you're interested in it, you can look at it online, or you can get one of Benjamin Creme's books. He talks about it a lot better than I could ever talk about it, or Alice Bailey's books. But from what I understand it, is the rays are actually make up all the cosmos, and there's 7 of them, because 7 is a universal number. The first ray is the ray of will. So countries, it affects everything from countries to individuals to animals, plants, minerals, all that kind of stuff, all the way up to stars and beyond stars. But from how it relates to humanity is that if, the person in incarnation has not only one body, like a physical body, but actually has an emotional or astral body, has a mental body, has a personality, which is the combination of all 3 of those bodies, and then a soul. And so every one of these bodies is found on one or other of these rays and actually manifests a bit of the quality of that ray. So the first ray is the way of will. Okay, so great disciples like Abraham Lincoln had a lot of will in him, a lot of first ray in him. it can be a very destructive, that ray itself can be very destructive, but it could also be a very constructive and synthesizing ray in the way that Abraham Lincoln did it, for instance, where he actually held the country together better than somebody could, or he did it, where if somebody didn't have any first ray in them, let's say there was a president at that time that didn't have any first ray, would probably not have been able to do what Abraham Lincoln did. Not only was Abraham Lincoln really advanced as a disciple, but he also was on the first ray. So if somebody wasn't quite as advanced and didn't have the first ray in them, we'd probably be living in two different United States right now, But it was because of that type of quality that Abraham Lincoln had. And then the second ray is the ray of the teacher, the ray of love, wisdom. So the Buddha and Maitreya are both on those rays. But anybody who's a teacher, for instance, and that's their line of least resistance, more than likely is on the second ray. Our sun is on the second ray. That's why in the Bible it says God is love. And so there are other solar systems that God isn't love. God might be intelligence. God might be will. The third ray is the ray of active intelligence. So cats are on the third ray. China's on the third ray. But people who have this ray it's a materialistic type of ray. That's the line of least resistance for them. So finance, somebody might find themselves in that field, in finance or business or something is a very third ray, but also the philosopher is on the third ray. And then the fourth ray is the ray of the artist. So Mozart was almost pure fourth ray. And then fifth ray is the ray of science or concrete science. Sixth ray, the devotee is found on the sixth ray. So people who are very devoted to an ideal, whether it's a country, a political ideal, of course, religious ideal, at the expense of others, have a predominance and preponderance of that particular ray quality. But and then the seventh ray would be the ray of ceremonial magic. Now, all these rays are divine, and they all have their own virtues, but because humanity is imperfect, we tend to take that quality of that ray and use it quite imperfectly, or use the vices of that ray. So, for instance, getting back to the sixth ray, Jesus was on the sixth ray, but his manifestation of that ray was very divine. But that ray quality can be very, it can be about sacrifice, it can be about love, but it can also be about being a zealot. But was Jesus dogmatic and a zealot? No, he wasn't, right? But people who have followed Jesus' teachings can be very dogmatic and can be zealots in their own way. So that's a little introduction to the rays, I guess. And then that leads me to the next question. Miss Ruby, she's actually said some funny comments over the past couple of days. I'm a self-diagnosed second ray. Well, what does Shakespeare say? Know thyself and to thy own self be true. So it's always good to know. And eventually we'll all know our rays, because it'll be important in terms of how we get along in life, how we relate with one another, how we teach one another. So education will be catered toward the child's ray structure, more so than just kind of a blanketed educational system, right? Countries that get along with one another have similar rays typically. So if you were a leader of, let's say, the United States, and you're looking at China, which has a different ray structure totally than the United States. The United States' soul ray is the second ray of love, wisdom. The only time it's really ever manifested that quality, that soul quality, was right after World War II with the Marshall Plan, with the sharing of the world's resources, but the sharing of the resources of this country to give to the Western Europe and so forth. But most of the time we relate to the world as their sixth ray, as our personality, the ray of abstract idealism. So if you look at the United States over the past couple hundred years, right, it has this ideal of freedom, this ideal of liberty, ideal of, everyone's equal under the eyes of the law. But is it really fulfilling that ideal, or is it falling short? And so people in this country that exhibit that personality quality think they're better than everybody else, think this country's better than everybody else. But the United States isn't any better than France or Russia or China or South Africa or Kenya. It might be a cleaner place to live than some other areas, but for the most part, everybody's people. There's no better country than any other country. But yet they live this ideal like it's better than every other country. But when countries start to relate to one another and trust one another, and these masters start teaching us about the rays and stuff like this, we'll be able to relate to people, like the United States will be able to relate better with countries that don't have the same ray structure, like China, which is on the first ray, their soul quality is the first ray will of power, and their personality is that ray of active intelligence. So China has always been kind of known for doing what it's in its best interest, kind of living self-isolated, but when it needs you, and when it doesn't, kind of thing, kind of like a cat, but that's how they kind of do it. Anyway, and then the last question, because I'm running out of time here, is there a link between the end of the Mayan calendar and the coming of Maitreya? Does the end of the Mayan calendar mean the approach of the coming of Maitreya? Not at all. They have nothing to do with anything. The Mayan calendar, of course, ended on, December 21st, 2012, so that's kind of went, and that was supposed to be the end of the world. But just like everything else, people relate to stuff in the past to try to compensate for their fear of the future. So before 2012, people thought that meant that the world was going to end, and there was a lot of discussion and rumors about that. And I'm sure if YouTube was as popular as it is today, there would have been thousands of videos with millions of views of everyone talking about gleefully about how the world was going to end on December 21st, 2012. But what happened? It just was like any other day. It was my mom's birthday, so I celebrated my mom's birthday that day. And then it just, went on to December 22nd, 2012. And just like people thinking that they're relating back Revelations to today, which Revelations has a lot to do with what's going on today, but it doesn't mean that the world's going to end. It just means that it is going to be the end of the last age, which is the age of Pisces, and we're moving into a new age, the age of Aquarius, which the qualities of Aquarius are synthesis and brotherhood, cooperation, sharing. Those qualities are starting to impinge humanity's thought, even to this day, whether we realize it or not. And these masters will help us build the structures, the political structures, the economic structures, the educational structures, the healthcare structures, the social structures to help reinforce that quality of sharing, justice, and brotherhood. Rather than the structures being specifically for just the few at the expense of the many, it will be for the benefit of all, for the expense of nobody. And so, but what we're seeing today is the death throes of our old structures. And so people are very scared about what's going to happen next. And so they guess and they think, oh my gosh, this is going to be it. This is the end of the world. Oh my gosh, Maitreya is the Antichrist. And anybody that talks about peace, they're evil. And that was one of the comments that I had a few videos back and so forth. Well, is that even true? I guess we'll see in the future. But anyway, I hope this all helps. But anyway, I hope you have a great day, and I look forward to talking to you again.
Remember to take action and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.